Hello, today I will be talking about bonding and reactivity of metal phosphines. Introduction to phosphines. This is the Wilkinson's catalyst that we use for catalytic hydrogenation of alkenes. And this here is the phosphine ligand. It is a monodentate ligand with sigma donation and pi acceptor capability. So how is the bonding in these phosphine ligands? For sigma bonding, the symmetry between the sigma orbitals have to match, and for pi bonding, the symmetry of the pi orbitals have to match. We know that the sigma donating ability and the pi acceptor ability are inversely proportional to each other. So if a phosphine is very electron rich, it will be a good sigma donor and poor pi acceptor. If the phosphine is electron poor, then it will be a poor sigma donor and a good pi acceptor. Because of this inverse ability of phosphines, it is very difficult to determine its electronic properties just by looking at its bond length, the phosphorus metal bond length. The reactivity of metal phosphines. It depends on two factors: the electronics and the sterics. This comes from the Salem-Kopman equation, that is this big equation here. In this, the first term gives the sterics and this last term gives the electronics. The middle term here is for the charged interactions. Bonding. For sigma donation, the HOMO will be the lone pair of phosphorus and the LUMO will be the empty d orbital of the metal. For pi back donation, the HOMO will be the filled d orbital of the metal, and the LUMO can either be the empty d orbital of the phosphorus or the sigma star antibonding Pa. The sigma donation and pi back donation is beautifully shown in this paper by Orpen and Connolly. What they did was they found out crystallographic data for 24 different metal phosphine complex with different substituents as phosphines, with different oxidation state of metals, and some of them even having carbonyl group and chloride group having attached to it. So what were their observations from the data? First thing was that as the oxidation state of the metal increases, the pi back donation ability decreases. This can be explained by such that when the oxidation state of the metal increases, the electron density on the metal center decreases, and hence it will not be able to give back the electron density to the phosphorus, and this will make it a worse pi donor. And due to this bad pi donation, the MP bond distance increases on oxidation. The bond becomes weaker and the bond length increases. Another thing that happens is the average APA bond angle increases on oxidation. We will see the consequence of this in the next slide. Some more things that happen is that the MCO bond distance increases on oxidation and the MCl bond length decreases on oxidation. So from the observations, we see that the phosphine acceptor, the LUMO for the pi acceptor ability, contains some Pa sigma star antibonding character. So the LUMO is not completely the 3d orbital, nor is it the Pa sigma star orbital. It is actually a mixture of these two orbitals making the LUMO. But the contribution from the sigma star and 3d are different for different substituents. If the A is more electronegative, the sigma star character will be higher, and hence the geometry will be more pyramidal. This can be seen from the bond angles. This is the molecular orbital diagram in which it is considered for a more electronegative element. Hence the LUMO here is the sigma star, Pa sigma star. This is the pi acidic character of the different phosphine ligands. We see that PF3 is has a very high pi acidic character, whereas PME3 has a very low pi acidic character. So the more electronegative atom attached, the Pa sigma star orbital becomes more lower in energy and hence is a better pi acceptor. Here is the energy levels of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen and fluorine. We see that fluorine is the lowest here, and that is why the Pf sigma star will be the lowest in energy, and this will make it a better LUMO. Hence the pi acceptor capability of Pf3 is much better than the PMe3 group. The quantification of electronics of phosphine ligands is done using the carbonyl CO stretching frequency. This was actually done by Tolman. In his paper, he carried out research on nickel carbonyl ligands, nickel carbonyl complex, in which the L is different phosphine groups. He checked the CO stretching frequency of this complex and found out that the CO stretching frequency varies for different phosphine ligands. Here, for a highly electron donating R group, the carbonyl stretching frequency is very low, and for a highly electron withdrawing R group, the stretching frequency is very high. This variation can be explained very nicely using this diagram. The more electronegative the R group becomes, the better will be the pi donation capability. Hence, the pi donation capability on this side will become much less, and that will make this bond stronger, and that is why the CO stretching frequency becomes higher. But for the methyl group or the carbon, these groups, the pi back donation ability is very less, and hence there will be high pi back donation here, and this will increase the bond length of CO. Due to the increased bond length, the stretching frequency will decrease. Sterics. Sterics is a very important factor for phosphine ligands, and it all depends on the R group that is attached to the PR3 ligand. So the quantification of sterics was done by Tolman, and he defined the parameter called as the Tolman cone angle. It is actually the angle of the cone that has a metal at the apex and encompasses all of the PR3 ligand, taking the van der Waals surface of the hydrogen atoms as its boundary. So this here is the Tolman cone angle theta. There is another parameter here called as the percentage buried volume. When we have n heterocyclic carbenes attached to the phosphorus, we cannot actually calculate the cone angle, and that is when we use the percentage buried volume. But for this discussion, we will stick to the Tolman cone angle. So Tolman found cone angles for different ligands. He saw that as the size of the R group increases, the Tolman cone angle increases, and as it becomes smaller, the cone angle decreases. So what is the consequence of a higher cone angle? So higher the cone angle, more will be the steric crowding, and this will make the phosphine group leave. Hence there will be rapid ligand dissociation. Due to the more steric crowding, the phosphine metal bond length will also increase. So the usual maximum number of phosphine that can bind to a single metal is given as following. For cyclohexyl or isopropyl group, only 2 of the ligands can attach to the metal, whereas for methyl group PMe3, only 5 or 6 of them can attach to the complex. Reactivity of any metal complex containing phosphines depends very much on the sterics and electronics of the phosphine ligand. Hence, the phosphine ligand plays a very important role. for controlling the reactivity of any reaction that contains these phosphine ligands. Here is a graph with the Tolman electronic factor on the y-axis and the Tolman steric factor on the x-axis. This graph gives a very clear idea of which ligand should be used for what reaction, and this helps us to change the activity, selectivity for homogeneous catalysis or reversible binding of a ligand. In this slideshow, we will talk about two such case studies in which the reactivity of the substrate depends entirely on the phosphine ligands. One of them is the hydroformylation reaction and the next one is the asymmetric hydrogenation. But before looking at the two reactions, we will talk about another important factor, that is the bite angle for bidentate phosphines. Bite angle is actually the angle between a metal and the two phosphines. This is the bite angle, and this is actually found out using crystallographic data. But Casey and Groom, they defined a parameter called as the natural bite angle. It is the bite angle that a ligand would prefer in the absence of any electronic preferences or any steric interactions of the other ligands. So they plotted a graph of a natural bite angle that is found out computationally and the bite angle that is found experimentally using X-ray crystallography, and they saw that it is a straight line with a zero intercept. This shows that natural bite angle is a very good parameter for bidentate phosphines or in general any bidentate ligand. The different ligands have different bite angles and it changes the selectivity of reactions. So in most reactions in most catalytic reactions, the trigonal bipyramidal geometry is an important intermediate. So if the angle between the diphosphines is 120 degrees, it will have a di-equatorial chelation, and if the angle between the diphosphines is 90 degrees, it will have an axial equatorial chelation. So Casey and group carried out potential energy studies on these three ligands. They plotted a potential energy diagram versus the bite angle, and this is the potential energy diagram for transphos ligand, and we can see here that for transphos the bite angle that is preferred, which will have a lower energy, is in the range from 90 to 145. Hence the transphos ligand prefers a wide range of bite angles. For spanphos, it was seen that it is mostly a transligating ligand, but it can still form cis complexes. But when a choice is given between trans and cis complex, it would rather prefer trans coordination. We see here that the spanphos ligand has a chiral carbon here, and because of this it enforces chirality on the substrate and makes the reaction enantioselective. We are going to see is the hydroformylation reaction. So this is a reaction which is widely used in industry for conversion of alkenes to aldehydes in the presence of carbon monoxide, hydrogen gas and a catalyst. The catalyst is also soluble in the reaction mixture, and hence this is a perfect example of homogeneous catalysis. In this reaction, two products can be formed. The first product is linear and the second product is branched. The carbon monoxide can attach at this position or this position to give linear or branched products. Wilkinson proposed a mechanism for this reaction and said that it will have a dissociative mechanism. So this is the reaction mechanism that was proposed by Wilkinson. In the first step, the catalyst dissociates phosphine to form a four-membered complex. The dissociation of complex depends on how bulky the phosphine group is. Then pi bond coordination happens to the four-membered complex to form this trigonal bipyramidal complex. Then hydrometallation happens to again form a 4-membered complex, and in this step the hydrogen gets attached to the alkene group. Then the carbon monoxide gets coordinated to form a trigonal bipyramidal complex. In the last slide we saw that if a ligand is bidentate, then its bite angle plays a very important role for the selectivity of a reaction. Here the intermediate is trigonal bipyramidal, and if the ligand was bidentate, then it would have steered the selectivity in a different direction. The next step is carbonylation, in which the ethyl groups get attached to the the CO group to form a 4-membered complex again. Then is the hydrogen coordination, in which the hydrogen gas attaches to the rhodium center. Then will be the oxidative addition, and finally there will be reductive elimination to release the aldehyde and the catalyst again. So we see that regioselectivity of this reaction entirely depends on the catalyst, but specific properties of the catalyst steer the regioselectivity: the sterics, the electronics, and the bite angle. We saw here that bite angle plays a very important role to steer the selectivity when the intermediate is trigonal bipyramidal. We will talk about sterics and electronics now. In this paper, Van de Veen carried out research using thiaxanthos ligands with varying basicity. Now this is the thiaxanthos ligand, and the basicity was changed by changing the aryl group. Different substituents were added to the aryl group with different basicity. So we see that the beta angle is somewhat constant for all of these substituents, and also the flexibility range. So there is no different. So we cannot show here that different bite angles will change the regioselectivity. We can only talk about the sterics and electronics here. Here the sigma p value for NCH3 twice is negative, and for CF3 it is positive, making this highly basic and making this less basic. So hydroformylation reaction was carried out for 1 octene at 80 degrees Celsius for these different substituents, and this was the result. This is the sigma p value from Hammett plots, and this is the L by B ratio, linear is to branched ratio. This is the selectivity of the linear aldehyde, and this is the isomerization of the alkene to 2-alkene, and this shows the rate of reaction. So what were the observations from this data? We see that except 5 and 6, the rate of reaction increases with decrease in phosphine basicity. This can be explained by the fact that fluorine and chlorine, the catalyst cannot be formed completely, or maybe the catalyst was deactivated for fluorine and chlorine. That makes the rate of reaction slower. Another thing that was seen is all the selectivities are in the range of 92 to 93%, which is a very good selectivity. The L by B ratio and the isomerization percentage both increase on decrease in basicity. So here in this diagram we see the way in which a linear aldehyde and a branched aldehyde is formed based on the basicity, and this is the 2-octene that is formed, the percentage isomerization. So what were the conclusions that were seen using the data? First is that decreasing phosphine basicity causes carbon monoxide dissociation. The bond between the metal and the carbon monoxide becomes weaker on a decrease in basicity, and this makes the alkene coordination better, and that is why the reaction rate increases. It was also concluded that for catalytic system, the linear to branched ratio is determined not by phosphine basicity but only by steric constraints. Here we see that for all of these R groups, the selectivity is somewhat similar in the range of around 92 to 93%. There is not much change in the selectivity. Hence we can see that electronics doesn't affect the rate of the regioselectivity for hydroformylation reaction. The more important factor is the sterics. The sterics of either the alkene or the phosphine group. Since the bite angle of all these ligands were similar, we cannot also say about the bite angles in this experiment. So the next reaction we will talk about is asymmetric hydrogenation. Noyori got his Nobel Prize in 2001 for asymmetric hydrogenation. So this was the reaction that he did. In this, a ketone is converted to an alcohol in the presence of a ruthenium binap catalyst. If S binap is used, this product will be formed, and if R binap is used, this product is formed. Hence, this catalyst is highly enantioselective. This is another example of conversion of ketone to alcohol by this binap catalyst. Here also we see that it is highly enantioselective. So what is binap? The binaphthalene gives its name as binap. These are the two forms of binap, the R and the S form. Even though there is no stereogenic atom in the binap, it still has chirality due to 8-trop isomerism. There cannot be any racemization in this due to the high steric hindrance of the two phenyl groups. From computational studies, it was found that the natural bite angle for this binap group is 93 degrees. This is the reaction mechanism for conversion of ketone to alcohol in the presence of ruthenium binap catalyst. Here we see that it is highly enantioselective and gives only the specific product that we want. The chiral arrangement of phosphorus phenyl groups plays a key role in determining enantioselectivities in this asymmetric hydrogenation reaction. The chirality of this phenyl group usually is transmitted to the phosphines, which is transmitted to the substrate and hence enforces chirality on the substrate. So Zhao and others did this experiment to show how effective are the bidentate phosphines for asymmetric hydrogenation. They did the conversion of this ketone to this alcohol in the presence of this catalyst. The DPPN is just another bidentate phosphines, and this PP is one of these. So this was the result that was seen for these different bidentate phosphines. So what were the observations? On increasing the bite angle, the conversion is also increased and the enantioselectivity is also increased. So Shao and group carried out a reaction to show how the selectivity and the yield changes for different bidentate phosphines. They carried out this reaction of conversion of this ketone to the alcohol in the presence of this catalyst. This ruthenium catalyst has a DPEN group which is already chiral, and hence this will enforce the chirality on the substrate. This PP group is the bidentate phosphines. So these different bidentate phosphines were used, and the enantioselectivity and yield was calculated, and this was the tabulated data. This is the yield, this is the enantiomeric excess, and this is the bite angle for the specific bidentate phosphines. So what were the observations from this data? First is that the bite angle of diphosphines have shown to be an important parameter in affecting catalyst activity and selectivity. So smaller the bite angle, lesser will be the conversion. But as the bite angle increases, it is not necessary that conversion will also increase. Another thing that was seen, that with the increase in the bite angle, there is an increase in the rate of reaction. Another thing is that aryl phosphines yield more active catalyst than alkyl aryl phosphines. The one with the largest bite angle yields the lowest enantioselectivity. This xanth-phos has the largest bite angle and the enantiomeric excess is 27%. So higher activity associated with the aryl phosphines is probably due to the lower basicity and the low enantioselectivity of the xanth-phos ligand is due to the highly rigid structure of this ligand. Overall, we can see that this R-BiNAp has a 99% conversion and 98% enantiomeric excess. This shows how good the BiNAp is as a ligand for asymmetric hydrogenation, since it gives the perfect enantioselectivity and also the perfect yield. So these are the references that I have used to prepare my presentation. I would like to thank Parna ma'am and Venkat sir for giving me an opportunity to work on this topic. I would also like to thank Biplab sir for helping me in preparing my presentation. Thank you very much.